All right, new information out of Parkland, Florida. The FBI received a specific report in January that the suspect in the school shooting could be plotting an attack, but agents failed to investigate the tip. A tipster who was close to Nicholas Cruz called the FBI and provided information about Cruz's guns and his erratic behavior, including his expressed desire to kill people and his disturbing social media posts. The caller was concerned that Cruz could attack a school. Just a few hours ago, Florida Governor Rick Scott said FBI Director Chris Wray, quote, needs to resign over the FBI's failure to follow protocol. The FBI put out a statement that says, in part, we have spoken with victims and families and deeply regret the additional pain this causes all those affected by this horrific tragedy. We will see how that plays out over the next few days and weeks. Here to talk about ways to keep schools safe, we're going to bring in former CIA field officer Stacey Blau. Stacey is the chief operating officer of 5326 Consultants. Stacey, your company trains people for mass shooter scenarios. So tell us a little bit about who exactly you train and how.
Yes, well, Kirsten, we travel to different places in the United States and do training here in Miami for mass shooting incidents to try to prevent them. And we do a lot of training actually with police response to active shooter, because law enforcement plays such an important role in responding to these incidents. And we're training increasing numbers of actually regular line police officers who actually in tactics that used to be reserved just for SWAT, just for special operations forces in the military. And what we're finding is that the police have a hunger for their regular beat cops to know how to handle these incidents, because unfortunately, not just in schools, but active shooters are showing up in all kinds of places that we wish they were not, but police need to be ready for that. In addition to that, we also look at any organization really that is any organization that could be a victim of workplace violence and active shooter situations. And that runs the entire gamut. Obviously, educational institutions, schools are what's in the news right now after the Parkland shooting. And they certainly are at the top of the list for this kind of training. We look at training the educators. We look at training the school security staff and school police who are there, because unfortunately, more often than not, the statistic is 70% of active shooter situations are over after 5 minutes. And unfortunately, that leaves police unable to often make it to the scene to eliminate the threat. And so it falls to the school security staff, to teachers, and actually to students themselves to train in techniques that will keep them safe. And of course, that, when students are concerned, needs to be age appropriate.
Right. And you know, this school actually had an armed officer, but he never encountered the shooter. What else in this particular situation could have been done?
Well, I think that the guidance that's given, because I also understand that the students in the school had undergone some form of active shooter training as well. And I saw some of the videos on social media, actually, of the students that they were recording themselves in the midst of the shooting. And one of the things that I did notice is that some of the children were hiding behind desks in the hope that that would protect them. And I could see open doors. And typically the guidance is run, hide, fight in that order. Run if you can escape, hide if you can't, and then fight if that fails. But the hiding part tends to be something where the training, I think, falls down, and something that we do a little differently. And that's that hiding is not going to be effective unless you can barricade yourself. So when you're talking about hiding, you need to have somebody closing a door, locking a door, turning off the lights, pushing a desk in front of that door, pushing another desk in front of that door. And the goal is to make it so difficult for the shooter to get in there that he's going to move on. And in the videos that I saw, the kids were sitting behind desks. If this shooter had come into that classroom, those kids would have been sitting ducks. It wouldn't have been enough with an open door. And again, it's a lot to ask of children, and that's why the training is so important. None of these things are instinctual. It's not going to be instinctual to fight an active shooter. It's not going to be instinctual to rush a person with a gun. But sadly, this is the reality that we're living in.
Right.
And kids are called upon to do things that no children should have to do, but we have to acknowledge the world that we live in, and we have to put that emphasis, the emphasis on that training. I haven't seen that much discussion of the need for training. There's been a lot of talk about mental health, about gun control. Those issues are certainly relevant, but I'm never afraid to take a page from the progressive handbook. You got to think globally, but act locally. And at the school level and at the school system level, we need to be addressing those things.
Right. Just a last question quickly. We've only got about 45 seconds here. What is some practical advice you'd give to parents who are watching right now?
Yes, I think parents need to speak to their children about these incidents. And the guidance that they give their children and the talk that they have with their children, of course, needs to be age appropriate. And I would say for kids that are middle school and up, the parents should be telling the kids, run, hide, and fight. Run, your campus. If you think you can get away, you run to a safe place. You run away from there. If not, hide, but make sure to close that door, barricade yourself, and pick up an object that you can take to actually fight. If it comes to that, and be prepared to rush that person, to hit him with whatever you've got, a stapler, a book, a fire extinguisher, a pen, whatever it is. And of course, for little kids, they need to be sensitized to it too. I think it's hard to give them that kind of guidance, though. Really, in those instances, it's really falling on the teachers to be the leaders of those children at that age.
Right.
But you want to comfort the kids. I'm a parent myself, and it's a terrible thing to have the conversation, but we need to have it.